Good evening, members. Thank you, whoever said that. And welcome to the Economic Prosperity Performance Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday the 22nd of January. Fire evacuation procedure. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the rear and side of the rooms. Go down the stairs and meet in War Memorial Park. May be ticked off. Apologies from absence are... We have two. And that is Councillor Regan, AM, and Councillor Cherrett, and they have been replaced by Councillor James and Councillor Sherlock. Declarations of conflict of interest or whipping. No. Urgent items, none. Confirm the minutes of the 12th of November, and I believe one of the clerks has something to say.
Thank you, Chairman. Minute 32 should actually read that the committee notes the minutes of the performance panel. It is for the performance panel to amend its own minutes, so it should say the committee noted these minutes.
Thank you. With those alterations, are they a true record? You accept them? Yes, good. Thank you. Members of the public participation. Don't look as if there's anybody up there, is there? I mean, the chairs are a bit tall, so I don't think there's anybody up there. No? Yeah, I believe it does. Standing invitation to the Reddit portfolio holder, welcome. And you'll be speaking at the beginning of each of the two items. Referral from other committees of the council, there are none. Issue raised by Cabinet, there are none. And Enterprise M3 update. And I believe a welcome to Kathy Slack, Director of Enterprise M3, and you're doing a presentation. Yes?
If I may, Chair, I'll just give her the build-up for a presentation. This is really an update on where we've got to with the LEP and what the LEP is currently engaged upon. It's timely because I think we are getting to a stage where the LEP is really starting to find its feet and to become very significant in the future of all the people who live within its area. I think it's worth reminding ourselves what the nature of a LEP is, because it's not the old regional group that we used to have with a mammoth infrastructure and thousands of people based in Guildford. It's a somewhat lighter operation, but I think the most important thing to remember is that it is business-led. This is not an extension of local government. And it's a partnership, and therefore it's not just business and local government, but it also brings in everybody from health, education, the whole range of other people who have a vested interest in the health and the general health, that is, community health of the area which it covers. I think the other thing to remember is it does cover a very wide area. I mean, it stretches from Spelthorne in the east, which is Staines, across the top to Andover, and then further down south to the area of the New Forest, and then back up again, going back up and into Surrey via East Hants, via Petersfield and all Borden and all those areas along there, and through into North Surrey as well. So you've got in all 14 districts involved, 2 counties involved. You've got any number of other people involved in the process. It's one of the biggest in the country, if not the biggest, and Kathy can clarify in the country in terms of the number of districts that are involved. It's not the biggest in terms of the number of people who are covered by it, because obviously some of the big city LEPs are bigger in terms of the number of people covered. But in terms of the area, it's one of the biggest. I think also it's, from what I can judge from what's been said, it's also been one of the most successful in making its mark with central government in terms of what it's trying to achieve. And I think it is very clear that no matter what colour of government, or even shades of different colours of government we get next time round, LEPs will continue, because they're getting themselves firmly established now in the way that central government will devolve money down into local areas. It is very important, therefore, that we do engage fully with what the LEP is doing, both to make sure, being very parochial about it, that Basingstoke gets its fair share, but also Basingstoke thrives if we have a very thriving local economy around us as well, and other services being provided from outside the borough. So from that point of view, I think not just as a source of money, though it's a very big source of money, as we'll see, but also as a source of opportunity for the future. Making sure that the LEP works and works well for us is a vital thing that we have to do in the future. So with that build-up, I think I couldn't make it any better than that, Kathy. Well, I could. I'd probably make it worse, actually, if I try. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I thought what I'd do, I'd just do a very short slot. You have had a paper already written by Di Hayward about what the LEP has been up to, but I thought I'd particularly concentrate on the strategic economic plan that we have been putting together alongside local authorities, and that's an important element. Two things I wanted to add to the introduction that's taking place. We are a strategic organisation. That's really quite important, because we do not see ourselves as delivery. We want to do delivery through others. We don't want to duplicate. So particularly we see local authority in that capacity as quite a strong delivery partner, but also other public sector organisations, and at times possibly the private sector. And we are, although we're a business-led organisation, we work very closely with the public sector, particularly local authorities, and we have local authority leaders that sit on our board, also the MOD and higher education, but we also have someone from the not-for-profit sector that sits on our board, because we're a great believer in knitting those three elements together. I am pleased to be here. I'm pleased to be here because it's nice. I always like talking about what we're doing, but it's particularly good for me to be in Basingstoke. Because as I get into say a little bit about our strategic economic plan, you will see that we have stuck our neck out and said that we have 4 growth towns which are absolutely fundamental for the economy of our area. Woking, Guildford, Basingstoke and Farnborough, and they are absolutely fundamental, and I'll come on to that when I show you a map in a moment. So Basingstoke is very important to us in terms of its economy and how it grows, because not only, as you've said, the impact that has on Basingstoke, but the impact it has on the surrounding hinterland. Our strategic economic plan builds on a strategy for growth, which we developed around about this time last year, actually, identifying the key things we wanted to do. And in that document, we identified 12 things we wanted to do around enterprise, skills, innovation and infrastructure. We then took that forward into a document called a strategic economic plan, which I can see that some of you got in front of you. It looks like that. It sits on our website. All the documents we put are on our website, and I'll talk to you a bit about that in a moment. This is a document that government have asked us to pull together. It's an important document because it is not just about the LEP, it is about the economy for the wider area. And the sorts of elements that we need to include within that is that the wider commitment to growth. And this is something that we work very closely with local authorities on. We have to demonstrate the priorities for the economy, but also the investment that's coming in from the area from other bodies. This isn't just about preparing a plan, which is a bid for government for something called local growth funds. although that is clearly quite a key element of this, because we would like to secure a substantial amount of that funds for the effective areas that we've got. We have to demonstrate effective collaboration and partnership. We are seen as really highly performing in that area. The whole culture and ethos of us from ALEP, from the chair downwards, which is Jeff Frent, is working very closely with all elements of all organisations, local authorities and businesses, and we hold a number of events with businesses to seek out their views. The strategic economic has to deliver collective decision making. I want to touch on that in a moment, because I want to say a little bit about the leaders group, which the local authorities are establishing, and I think that's going to be quite an important ingredient into how we move forward. We have to build a strong relationship with business. This is hard, because business is busy, but we go out of our way working with organisations such as the Chambers, Federation for Small Business, Institute of Directors, CBI, but also ourselves working directly with businesses. And again, referring back to Basingstoke, Basingstoke is one of the local authorities who has a very strong relationship with its businesses, which helps us enormously. Believe me, it is not the case everywhere. We've got a clear and deliverable growth vision, strong financial backing, trying to get there. We've got some work to do on that, particularly with the private sector, and the cross-local authority collaboration on growth. We have got 14 districts within our patch, 2 county councils, that we need to bring together in one group. They are representative on our current board, but we are going to expand that, so we will have a representative from each of the county councils, and we've got the deputy leaders sitting on our group, and then moving to a position where we have 2 leaders from the districts in Hampshire and 2 leaders from the districts in Surrey. The important part about the governance that's being set up is that the local authorities are establishing a leaders group of those local authorities that I've referred to, and it will be that group that will decide who the leaders are that sit on our board. That leaders group is an important step forward. It's seen by government as a gateway to securing any funding. If any LEP has not got any formal governance in place, then there is no way it will get money. The government would prefer combined authorities. You can imagine that is very, very difficult to achieve. They would then prefer a joint committee, but actually a joint leaders board is an important step, because it brings people together into one place. The strategic economic plan sets then the framework for how we work regardless of any funding that comes from government. But we also have to deliver to government in what's called a growth deal. And a lot of emphasis is put on the deal, because this is us going to government and say, government, our priorities are X, Y and Z. These are the things that we want to do. We would like X sum of money from you to do these things, and we want to put a substantial figure forward. For that, we will do whatever it is we want to do, and for the outputs that we will achieve. And we would like the following flexibilities, because the government is very keen that it's not just about money, it's about some of the flexibilities we might want to seek to move forward. For us, in a high-performing economy, we have got to give a strong rationale and compelling offer. That is what they're looking for, and I will touch on that in a moment, because I think that makes it hard for us, because I think government find it difficult to see how they can support a high-performing economy. But believe me, with a small amount, we can make a small amount of money go a long way. So part of our job is lobbying very hard for the needs of this particular area, and I'm sure you will understand that from a Basingstoke position. This is just a verdict of how we're doing. We are highly regarded by government. I think there is still some work to do on that last point to demonstrate we need the funds, because effectively they might say to us, well, you've got economy to die for, just get on and do it, but we've got some work to do. And everything, as you will know, is not all rosy. There are some issues we've got with either unemployment, housing, and various other things that need to be put right. We have put together a European document. We've got very, very positive feedback for that. That will draw in 39 million into the area. We've now put in, as well as the Strategic Economic Plan Progress Report and also our Strategic Economic Plan, we are seen as being ahead of the curve, particularly in our evidence base and our rationale and setting out what we want to do. We've got agreement from the Leaders Board of local authorities, which is a big tick. We've done a lot of work on development of projects. That will dominate the time now between now and the end of March, when we submit our final plan, because we want to go out to partners to seek submissions for proposals coming forward in the form of growth packages, and I'll say a bit about that in a moment. And we're developing some freedoms and flexibilities. I thought you might find it helpful to just have a look at the sorts of funds we've got. We've got a Growing Enterprise Fund that's used to unlock infrastructure, principally for homes, and we've got the Sentinel scheme here, but also jobs. That is a loan fund. That money is all out at the moment, and will start coming back in next year, so we'll be able to open up the fund again. We get some core funding, which pays for me and my very small group of staff, but also importantly pays for development work to set out our strategy. We have a local transport board, and we've already got 24.7 million for major highway schemes, and work to support the work we do on transport. As I've mentioned, we've got the EU funding. Local growth fund, we think we ought to be getting at least 50 million per year from 2015. I think that's going to be tough to get that, but actually we've got to set our sights quite high, and local authorities support us with some funding. So that's effectively our funding package. This is effectively our strategy on a page. I'll talk you through this. I haven't got a pointer, but I'll try and take you from effectively left to right. And I particularly want to start with those bubbles on the left-hand side, because although the top one is about investment and money, I actually am a great believer in you can achieve an awful lot through collaboration and making sure you're not duplicating, through new ways of working and through freedoms and flexibilities. And that's why that left-hand side is particularly important. On the right-hand side, we believe we're all about increased productivity, about making our businesses more effective, creating wealth, and therefore also completing jobs and startups. We want to work in a few key sectors, some priority sectors around that. We are very, very strong in this area, digital media, and that whole area of IT, and Basingstoke in particular has got a number of businesses in that field. That is a field that is high performing, is forecast to grow strongly, and importantly create jobs. We think that's important. Aerospace is also important, and we've got a number of niche sectors. We've identified 3 particular things we want to do. On that right-hand segment on the Science Tech Corridor, one of the things I'm conscious of when I look at our sector and business base is we have got so many science technology companies around that we want to make sure that we're really supporting those companies and they're not moving elsewhere. I have a real fear about the pull of London. London is exceptionally strong in terms of economic growth at the moment, particularly in that IT and digital media sector. I was at a dinner last night with some businesses, and one of the businesses was saying, you know, they just couldn't resist it and have gone up to London even though it's more costly. So we have got to really make sure we hang on to those businesses. It isn't just about supporting that sector, it's about supporting those sectors that support it. So it can go from accountants and lawyers and patent lawyers, But equally, we need to make sure we've got the skills, particularly around the areas of science, technology, engineering and maths. We need to make sure that we tackle the problems of congestion, which we know hamper growth with businesses. We also need to look seriously at housing, housing that is affordable, because we know that is a block to the economy. We need to look at the hotel sector. Every dinner I go to with businesses is they talk about they need much, much better hotels, both for the staff that they're bringing in, but also their customers. And that's a piece of work that we're going to do. As I say, we've identified 4 key growth towns. We also believe there's what we call some step-up towns. They tend to be our ex-MOD garrisons, so Andover, Whitehall and Borden, Camberley, Aldershot. Staines-upon-Thames is also that in this, but it isn't an ex-garrison town, where we believe there are particular things that need to happen in those areas to help them develop and play their part in the economy. And then in the middle, we've got what's called a growth hub, which is where we want to bring all the people who are working, particularly in the business support arena, in the skills arena, into a virtual hub where we start to exchange information. You know, one of the things that has happened with the demise of whether it's CEDA or the business links or the general cutbacks that you have faced is we've got lots of people now working in silos. My belief is we don't actually need many more programs. We just need to help people find what's there. I'll move on into. I just wanted to talk to you about technology cluster, because the KPMG Tech Monitor report has identified the southeast is the highest in terms of tech clusters. The top 10 tech clusters are in this area around here, of which 4 of those were in the Enterprise M3 area. That shows the importance of this area. I wanted to show you this map. This is the map where we've started to map the 100 most strategically important companies, and not necessarily the biggest, they're strategically the most important. We ended up there with 5 clusters actually, because interestingly Andover have got some very, very large businesses in that patch. That, along with other analysis we did, has pointed us to these 4 key growth towns, and that's why I thought I would include it in the detail. And these are the sorts of things that we're looking to put our bid to, particularly for the Local Growth Fund 4, which is principally capital money. So this is infrastructure. So we're looking at things to do with road, rail. I know there's a particular issue here about lobbying for the case for better links from here into Reading. We're looking at having a congestion pinch point fund. We're working particularly with FE and employers on some skills projects, and clearly Basingstoke College of Technology will play a key role in there. Looking at market intelligence that we can share with businesses. Want to do a lot around careers information. Basingstoke have got an absolutely fantastic model that we're using and thinking about how we can franchise that out in some sort of way. We're looking at major development schemes, broadband, I've mentioned hotel, real estate entrepreneurs, really making sure that we develop these sort of commercial premises that businesses need, looking at town centre regeneration and that whole integration of services. Now, the important thing about this particular list is we can't come up with that list for Basingstoke on our own. We don't go into a room and say, oh, now what do we think Basingstoke need? We go out to principally local authorities but other bodies and say, what is it you need? What is it you need for your economy against the strategic economic plan we've put together? And on that sort of basis, we will then look at those proposals and put them forward as a series of growth packages. Importantly, and I really welcome it, the work that you're doing on the master plan completely dovetails with what you're doing and really gives us a strong base to work on here. And we've got a very healthy relationship with Basingstoke. I think this is an area that's up for growth. I've been impressed by what I've seen. I've worked with Basingstoke, I would have thought, for about over the last 10 years in various roles. I really get a sense that it's on the up from the way people talk about it. I live in South Oxfordshire. My son's talking about Basingstoke, which I always think is a real sign when the youth elsewhere are starting to talk about Basingstoke and some of the attractions and wanting to come down here. And I just really get a feel that things are moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Jane, Gavin Jane.
Thank you. Question for Kathy. It would appear that the largest amount of confirmed funding so far, and I appreciate it will be swapped by Regional Growth Fund, etc., is the 39.1 million over 7 years from the EU. What would happen to that if we were to leave the EU?
You wouldn't get it. Straight as that.
Thank you. I was wondering, can you talk about, because later on I've got a recommendation in relation to scrutiny and how that works. Can you talk about how we as local authorities scrutinise, or how is the function of the LEP scrutinised from a local authority perspective? Because it's seen as being out there. How many people actually know, as members of the public, let alone councillors, what it is and how it works? And
I can talk about what it is at the moment and how it might move forward in the future, and it is a constant battle for us, not only in terms of communities but how we actually keep businesses informed. So in terms of communication, we're doing all the regular things in terms of websites and everything else. For local authorities, we have local authority board members that sit on our board. Up to date, there has not been that leaders board, which I spoke about earlier, that has sat alongside us. And I think one of the things that is not happening as well as it ought to, perhaps, is some of the feedback from those local authority board members out into other local authorities. That will change with the development of a leaders group, because that leaders group, which is being developed and will be supported by other local authorities, not the LEP, and I think that's the important bit, because it will be a separate body. It will elect who sits on our board and effectively will almost mandate those groups that come into our organisation. So that's one way that will go forward in the future. The other thing we have got is we've got something called an implementation group. It's chaired at the moment by Andrew Lloyd from Rushmore. On that group sits a number of chief executives, of which Tony from here sits on that group, alongside the chairs of our action groups and other business support organisations. And that group is advising on the way forward. So that's another way in which local authorities engage with us. We've also got a series of action groups, all led by the private sector, but again, they are all supported by a local authority officer, and they've got local authority people sitting on those boards advising on the way forward. We've got no, if you like, formal scrutiny, which I think is what you're referring to at the moment, but there's a whole host of things we do. And I can only comment on how we work compared to others. We have a very strong relationship with our local authorities. We work very, very closely with them on all that we do. That is not necessarily the case of all LEPs around the country, and I know that because that is what we have been told is one of our key strengths as a LEP by government when they've met with us, and also by ministers who have met with us. I don't know if that...
can I follow on from that and just ask you, when you talked about the leaders board, and you said they will determine who is elected. Who is they, and how will that process work?
I can't say for definite how the process will work, because the process will be developed by the local authorities. The leaders group, which has been developed by the local authorities, will have on it the leaders of all the local authorities in the area, so the 14 districts and the 2 counties. It will also have the chief executives of of all those local authorities. They, as a group, will decide how that group is made up, and as a group, they will decide who chairs that leaders group and who will be appointed to sit on the Enterprise N3 board.
And in the introduction from Clive, in your introduction, he talked about health, but there was no mention of health tonight, and I can't see it in the papers, and it seems to be very much that's missing. Is that a gap, or in relation to your priorities, but also in relation to paper we've seen? I haven't read the whole document, links to this, but where does health sit with this as an economic strategy?
When you talk about health, you're talking about the health and well-being of people rather than the health sector, right? Both. I think health as a sector is essentially in here, although it might not get mentioned as much as it should be. It's one of our life sciences, of which health, I would classify health within that, is a key sector within this area, and it is a sector that's important because you'll know it's one of the major employers across the piece. In a document like this, it's impossible to mention everything, and there's some various supporting documents which would support that in terms of sectors. So I think that is an area we'd cover. I don't think we have picked up health as an issue within our strategic economic plan. I think that is important in terms of people's involvement in employment and working. I think the way that we would address that particularly is, and where we would be able to put some funding in, is through our European funding stream, where there is a particular focus through the European Social Fund on disadvantaged people. So there's some aspects in there that we will be working with particular groups of people in particular areas, and going out with bidding as such. And I think, underpinning these sorts of documents are the raft of documents that sit within the local authorities, who would be principally addressing some of those health issues. Yeah.
One more and then...
And I really welcome that. And what I'd like to see is maybe we can have from this local authority is a plan to show how they do link. So, for me, because there is the social aspect of this plan, and as long as you're in work, you're healthy, this is relevant. But if you're not in work and you're not healthy, I'm not sure that this is picking up those issues, and that concerns me. So I would like to see how the strategic economic plan links to all of our other plans, and are there gaps? So I very welcome the opportunity to, do we need a new neighbourhood renewal strategy? Where does it link to the social aspect of social inclusion? And so I just think there's still a lot of work to do, and it just assumes that everyone's in work and you're all healthy and you're all being housed. So for me, there's some gaps here.
I know where you're coming from. It is difficult within a document like this to cover everything, and I certainly recognise things that you're talking about. In large parts of my careers, I've done a lot of work with unemployed and long-term unemployed, and I recognise particularly the importance of employment as a motivator and everything else. I don't think it features in this draft strategic economic plan because this is a really, really high-level plan. Maybe we need to mention it in some stage in terms of how we support people and communities. My expectation would be that sort of activity would be sitting out with those organisations that have got money to support that, which would be local authorities and health service and others. But there will be things that we will be able to do through the European strategy through the work that we are doing on skills, through the work we've identified in our skills strategy, and all those aspects. So it's there, and we can pull that out.
Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Kathy. It's good to meet you. Good to see you, good to get to know you, because I think we're going to need to get to know you and work with you. Could it be possible to get back to this slide, please, because I want to ask a question about it. Yes, next one. If you look in the centre, outside the blue circle,
Yes.
half of it is black and half of it is white. Now, is that intended to indicate that spend would be 50% on step-up towns and 50% would be on the other side? It's not intended to convey that. What is the black and white intended to convey? Just there is a distinction.
Yeah, just that there are two. This it's purely to demonstrate that we've got two key priorities: step up towns and SciTech corridor, and we've got a middle area around the Gov Hub. That's all that's meant to signify.
That's helpful, because the reality is there will inevitably be tension between, do you spend money on step-up towns or the other growth areas, etc., etc. And presumably that will be a natural tension which will happen throughout all the developments. Would that be correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know this is going to be a difficult area, because if you're not either a growth town or you're not a step-up town, your automatic reaction possibly to this document is, well, where do we fit? You do fit, because there will be things that we want to do, particularly in the area of skills, particularly in the area of the growth hub in business support, where we will want to work right across the piece. However, we do see it as our role. If we've got to identify what we need to do in the economy, we have to say where we've got to focus, which is why we are talking about places. It's why we're putting emphasis on transport, why we're putting the emphasis on housing. We know some of those things will be unpopular, controversial, but we are stating what's needed for the economy.
Thank you for that. In this document, which is referenced in the paper we got today, in this document it refers to, as my colleague has suggested, good governance. Now, I think you know as well as I know that good governance will always include an element of scrutiny. And there are other CPs, strategic economic partnerships, who already are looking at or introducing scrutiny within themselves. One is Birmingham Solihull, and the other one is West of England, according to our research. Now, obviously it's early days. You don't start with a fully made-up animal, you develop it. But would scrutiny be an element that you would integrate automatically as you go further down the line?
I think what I'd say to that, there are 39 local enterprise partnerships across the country. They have been in different stages of development. So a number of those I know. So Birmingham and Solihull have existed as a partnership of local authorities probably for at least 10 years, maybe longer. The West of England have been in a similar position, so have Manchester, a lot of the key cities. So near us has been Solent, which has had a joint committee for the last 10, 12 years, I think, that Push has been in existence. We're not like that, we're new. You'll probably know that Basingstoke was actually the heart of the original LEP proposal. It grew out of here. So we're new and emerging, and we're just getting our structures established. The government, quite rightly, is saying that as these organisations have developed and as they're going to have more roles and responsibility, more funding, there needs to be they themselves need to be strongly governed, but equally there needs to be a strong democratic link, which is hence the move to establishing either joint committees or leaders board, and I think that's a really important step forward for us. And that needs to be set up. I know some places have got scrutiny in place. I don't know how that works with their existing groupings. They tend to be much bigger organisations with a lot more funding than we have got. West of England is a very, very big organisation. It has got a lot of staff. I've got 5. So it's that. So I'm not ruling it out, but I just think we just have to take a step at a time. But that effectively is something for local authorities to consider.
For the moment, one final question. I know this is not a direct replacement of regional government, and it was intended not to have money funneled through these things originally, but now the ball game has changed. The government has changed the rules, and they now become mechanisms by which government will actually funnel money to local enterprise and strategic enterprise arrangements, and that's obviously welcome. Do you anticipate that form of government intervention and further larger sums of money coming down those funnels?
I think an answer to that would be I hope so. I think it's going to be difficult for us, and it's very difficult to read how much additional funding we would get as an organisation, and I think that it links in a way back to the governance situation, because when we were originally established, I don't think my chair or board had any idea of the scale of things they were going to be asked to do, and you're now asking them to do a whole host of other things, bearing in mind they are all volunteers. They do not get any payment. We don't even pay expenses, and the amount of things they are being asked to do is quite large now, and we could be moving to a position. We could have a 400 million or something like that. The other thing I ought to have mentioned earlier, we're a partnership body. So we have an accountable body, which is Hampshire County Council. So in a way, that they obviously will be doing quite a lot in making sure that those funds are paid out correctly. So they do an element, if you like, of scrutiny, because they're our accountable body, and they work across the piece. And Basingstoke itself is also accountable body for some of the streams of funding we get as well.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Kathy. Well, if I look at these sort of the companies on here, obviously there's quite a smattering of sort of high-tech companies, aerospace, defence and such like, sort of like the sector I've worked in a lot of my life. And the one obvious problem I've always noticed is the education in this area. If you look at it, I think there may be a university in Guildford, but the fact that I'm not sure suggests it doesn't register on my radar. But the point is, if you look at Basingstoke, Andover, most of that area is remarkably education-free at that sort of level. And of course, for big companies, I think they call it continuous personal development now. But because of the way technology changes, it's not like accountancy where 2 and 2 still equals 4. With the sort of a technology sector, everything changes. You have to relearn things all the time, and all that. It's constantly moving, so you constantly have to re-educate yourself or your staff. And the problem is in this sort of area, one of the problems with certainly companies I've worked at, they've always struggled to be able to send them down. I mean, when I did a degree, I had to go up to London, up to the North London Poly, up in Islington, which was great fun. And there was just nowhere in this area that did even something as basic as polymer engineering. It's the same. I'm going around my son at the moment, looking at universities, and there's quite a group. Obviously, Southampton's got 2, I think, and Portsmouth 1. but they're not in this. They don't come in the M3 partnership, and obviously given the sort of problems they've got in Portsmouth at the moment with the dockyards closing, whether they could be, people like that could be drawn in, that might give us a bit more sort of scope there. I mean, I know the university's still there, and there isn't it's not like there's a wall along there stopping us from going over, but that's the sort of thing I think that a lot of these companies, it would help them. How are we going to improve education in these areas? I know you can't just open a university just like that, but I mean, there's not even any of the old polytechnics in this area. It was, ironically, it never was a major high-tech area around Basingstoke, but it was always a manufacturing area. But we seem to have lost the manufacturing training that we used to have. I mean, I went to Beta, the engineering training place. It still exists, but it seems to be a college of hairdressing, from what I can see of it now. And the Newbury one closed, so there's the sort of absence of anything that. And the problem is, all the engineers I know are about my age, and we're all looking to retire, and there doesn't seem to be the youngsters coming through, and there's no one. And even if they wanted to, I don't see where they would go now to be trained. Is that something that the LEP's sort of going to be able to look at?
There actually is. We've got a lot of good education establishments in the area. We conducted a skills strategy over the summer, and one of the things we highlighted, we have got not only strong universities at Surrey, Winchester, and Farnham, which is the University of Creative Arts. On our borders, we've got Southampton, and we've also got Reading. So we're exceptionally well served by universities. We're also well served by FE colleges and high-performing FE colleges. I think the other thing I'd say that we established, which again is unlike other areas, they're not only high-performing, but they also work well as a group together. Both that group of further education colleges and also the group of HE, and working together. One of the things we want to do is obviously make sure that knowledge and experience is spread around the place. We're doing some work here in Basingstoke, particularly working with an organisation called Set Squared, which is a group of universities, about how they can support the businesses within this town. That doesn't mean there'll be a university within Basingstoke, but it's how we bring out that experience from higher education to support the companies that are in here. And we've also doing a lot of work around some of that skills development. You mentioned engineering. It is a big issue about engineering, about what's happening with the demographics. I was in skills 25 years ago, wrote a report about the problems about engineering, and it's coming to bear now. And it's amazing how some of the bigger companies are just realising 5 years' time, they face an enormous issue with a lot of people retiring and moving on. So it is a big issue for us. And we are very passionate about it. Those of you who know Jeff French will probably know he's president of the Institution of Civil Engineers, so that's something he takes very, very, very seriously. And it is, we're trying to do some things around it, and there will be things we'll be doing around it, particularly using our European funds.
Mrs. Frankham.
Yes, there's a lot about big business, and you've sort of said about startup, but I saw very little, so I don't know if you've done any work or if there's any intention to do any work on people that are working from home, because it's like they say, from tiny acorns oak trees grow, and I think that's where a lot of growth would be. People starting at home, growing, then getting small units and getting bigger. I think one of the problems that I've certainly had with people that I know that are starting up on their own is things like the broadband. It's very patchy, even in my ward. We've got one side of the road have got a good service, and on the other side, practically none. They can't get onto. I'm not a technical person at all. Everybody here knows how I struggle with that, but they've got like Infinity, which you really need to be able to grow. And I didn't see everything about big business and very little about how we would grow from single people at home and then becoming big employers.
Um, Again, it's an issue about coverage. All businesses are important to us. One of the reasons why we are so keen on establishing a growth hub and developing a business portal and helping people is that we want to be able to help all either existing businesses or businesses set up to get the help they need, to direct them quickly to things. I think an element of the growth hub that we're looking at, which again will hopefully fund through the EU funds, is some sort of startup service, which some local authorities are currently operating in. And on this diagram here, you'll see that startup is one of our priorities. We have identified the issue of broadband being an issue for people, either companies who are working from home or people who work from home 1 day or 2 days a week, and that is a very, very common feature now. Broadband is particularly an issue in rural areas. I find it very difficult to get a feel for that in terms of exactly where those companies are. We did a piece of work last year. We were hoping it would, when we mapped it out, it would come up with businesses in nice little bunches and we could decide what to do about it. In fact, they're just all over the place, so it's far more difficult. The county councils and local authorities' involvement in putting out a broadband means there will be a lot of coverage, but we will still have a number of businesses who will not got broadband. We are using our growing enterprise funds as an attempt to try and get out to those areas, but it is very, very expensive to reach some of those remote areas. But that's one of the things that we're doing. But the principal thing we want to do is make sure those people who are starting up know where they can go to get the help they need to start up a thriving business.
I keep on hearing about all these issues for broadband in rural areas, and I don't doubt it for a minute that there is. But we also have it in urban areas. I'm thinking about serving, say that the mum or the dad that's at home with family want to work from home and may not necessarily be able to upend and go to a hub to use for somewhere else. It's just I keep on hearing that we're trying to get better broadband in rural areas, whereas Basingstoke, actually the bigger half of Basingstoke live in the urban areas. And when you've got an estate on one side of the road, you've got good broadband. I'm lucky I'm one of them, but my friends on the other side of the road don't. And I'm just wondering if we're going to try and equalise in the urban areas, because quite frankly that's probably where you're going to get more growth.
I can't comment directly on the rollout plans for this area. I have seen them in generally, but the plans for the rollout of superfast broadband will go, as far as I can see it, will go out to the urban areas if they haven't got it already, which that might be over a period of the next couple of years. And there is a website that you can go on, and I can't remember what it is, but it's linked to the county council, which will tell you when you're likely to come on stream. The issue for us, though, and there might be an issue, some sort of particular issue for that particular road or whatever, I couldn't comment on that. The issue for us are those rural areas that are not featuring in the plans, because they're in the white space, and that's the area that we are concerned about, because we cannot see a solution for those particular businesses.
I just think when we're doing new developments, we've really got to start thinking about things like broadband, because it makes a difference actually in people. Nowadays, one of the first questions you ask is, what is broadband like? Followed usually by education.
Councillor Gardner.
Good evening, Cathy. On the ingredients slide, there's a reference to Careers Info, the Basingstoke model. What is so special about the Basingstoke model, and are you going to roll it out to the other areas?
The thing that's special about the Basingstoke model is, as far as I understand it, it is mainly funded by the private sector. It's got a little bit of public sector. I'm looking to Di, she might know the answer to it. But what is significant about it, it's run by the Basingstoke Consortium. I'm just trying to desperately think who their major sponsor is. I think it's a bank. They've got some really quite very strong businesses involved with that. They roll out a whole series of work experience. If any of you are in the education sector, you know it's very difficult now to get proper work experience, so they work on work experience. But I think the issue for me is it's very focused, it's funded by the private sector, and we would be very, very keen to franchise or develop that in some sort of way, and we're already talking to other areas, including Basingstoke, about how we might do that across the piece. And one of the other things that I like about it is that because it is local and uses local employers, it helps either young people or young adults understand what the employers in their patch are looking for and what the careers opportunities are. And I think that's something that we would want to replicate rather than having a national careers service model which people might have difficulty relating to.
Just one final point on this particular part of the meeting, Chair. I noticed that transport is a significant element of your interest and involvement, and obviously that's essential in terms of motorways, access, and even junction to off motorways. But I currently represent an area that's being isolated by the bus company cutting. This is 2 miles from the town centre, by the way, a whole 2 miles in the core urban area. Bus company cutting buses and cutting areas of the estate that I represent out of service at all. And the reality is people are complaining currently they can't get to work. They can't get to the shops. Some of them are obviously elderly, but some of them actually have jobs and rely on transport in their head. So transport in the widest sense needs to be clearly understood. There's no point in having trains to Basingstoke if you can't get away from the station. Thank you.
I totally agree. And on our Transport Action Group, we have the bus operators on that. Because you're right, you need to get all the links in the chain working effectively. I think the difficulty comes with some of those bus companies; they are subsidised. Some of the issues are some of that subsidy's gone. We've all had to take some quite sort of difficult decisions over the last few years. We, as a strategic organisation, there's a limit to how we could not get involved in something like that. At such a local level. That would be something more for here, but we do recognise the issue. It is important that people are able to go, because often people go sort of bus, train, and then walk. It's a combination of things, and we would want to be encouraging public transport.
Got nobody else, but yes, of course you can.
Just as a point of information or whatever, that actually next week, on the 28th, which I think is next week, isn't it? In the council chamber, there is a presentation, there's a workshop, which is free for all SMEs, and presumably anybody who is even smaller than an SME, a VSME if you like, on getting up to speed with broadband and business support. So there's a workshop next week being held here, and it's being sponsored by Hampshire County Council, so they're one of the people who will be talking about how their intention is to extend the superfast broadband coverage to 80 to 90% of premises across the county by the end of 2015. That's rural and urban included, so there will always, I suspect, be areas where it's just not cost effective to reach. But anyway, it's happening. It's underway. If you live where I live, the sooner it happens, the better, because you might complain that yours is slow on one side of the street, but I bet you it's about twice as fast as mine is where I am. So it would be really, really desirable. And I do actually have people who do work from home a lot, apart from myself, locally. And so we all need it. But anyway, if anybody's around, wants to go next week on the 28th, which must be Tuesday, because my wife's birthday is on the Wednesday.
Please, card sent direct. Thank you very much. Now debate. Yeah, carry on. Yeah, sorry.
It was just that I've tabled an amendment to the recommendation. I don't know if you want to take it now.
Yeah, we need a proposer and a seconder, and then we'll talk on the motion.
I'd like to propose the amendment.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on it? Carry on.
Thank you. In the document that we've got that was given us tonight, it talks about this the SAC being a bottom-up approach, and it has had undertaken extensive consultation. We all recognise, or the Labour Group particularly recognise, that the absolute opportunity we have, and that we want the LEP to be a dynamic organisation and body, but we also see that it now has significant power and also significant money, and in the future it's going to possibly have more money. And we've been told tonight about this leaders group, but to be honest, that doesn't fill me much, as an opposition member, that doesn't fill me with much hope really as to it being accountable. Until I looked up, I wasn't sure who was on the board and how it was made up, and I know very little about the LEP, very little at all really, and I think it's really important that a body such as this is accountable and is transparent and open. And you talked tonight about it being a democratic deficit, and that's being addressed. What I'd like to propose to the committee is that we look at some of the scrutinies of LEPs that are going on around the country. We've talked about two within the recommendation tonight, which is Greater Birmingham and Solihull, and also the West of England. I know they are, like you say, they're large bodies, but maybe that's something we can learn for the future. But what we're asking is that the officers prepare a briefing paper for this committee detailing the situation regarding scrutiny of the LEPs across the country, and using some of these examples, and that the briefing paper to be placed on the agenda of this committee at the earliest opportunity. This paper would allow members the opportunity to discuss whether scrutiny of the M3 LEP is an issue that they would like to progress, and other authorities and of the LEP. I just think it's something we should think about. It's significant money, there's lots of things happening, and I think the body needs to be transparent, and we need to, as a local authority, think about how that leaders group works and how it is accountable to us as a local authority. So I urge you just to initially ask the officers to do this initial piece of work, to look at this, and then for us to think about, is this something that we would not want to see, and maybe we can pass this information over to the LEP for them to then, it's a piece of work that we have started, and maybe they can use this in looking at their practice in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In seconding the motion, I have no hesitation in seconding it, because I think it's good practice. The reality is, I think we in Basingstoke have to demonstrate, first of all, that we support the principles and the practices of the Strategic and Economic Partnership, because it's in our overwhelming interest, first of all, that it works, that it's successful, and that it delivers. But in our terms, I think we have to say we want to deliver for Basingstoke essentially from our own self-interest point of view, in representing the people of Basingstoke. But if it is successful, it will be good for Basingstoke. And we want it to be successful. If you look at the actual figures produced, the money figures produced in the document that we've currently seen and have referred to, most of that money is public money. It's raised by councils or governments, and it is produced to the partnership, the strategic partnership and the local partnerships, and it's government money, it's public money. And it is right and proper that an opportunity to scrutinise how public money is spent is arranged. I do understand that the partnership is young, relatively speaking, but it is not a new concept. The issue is not new. The arrangements are not new. So we don't need to reinvent a wheel. We can actually learn from the existing successful economic partnerships, for instance, Birmingham, and go faster as a consequence in developing the partnership. So I wholeheartedly support the paper, I support the concept, I support the principle, I support Cathy in what she's attempting to do, and the councillors who sit on the boards. But we do need an accountability element. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be supporting the amendment or recommendation that's been put forward. The reason for that is, I think, as Cathy has explained, this is in its early stages in comparisons to the other LEPs that have been mentioned. As she said, there's larger sums of money involved there, and as I said, they've been in existence for a long time. I think it's slightly premature at this point to start scrutinising things. I think at the moment we should let the leader go to the leaders board and come back to us accordingly. I don't think that, again, at this point it's a good use of officers' time to go away and prepare a paper and come back to us. I just think it's all a bit premature. Let the leader go, let him come back and feed it back to us, and we can then take it from there. I just don't think the right time is now.
Councillor James.
Thank you. We keep letting the leader go, but he comes back all the time, which is annoying. I'm going to speak in support, not perhaps the wording in terms of scrutiny and everything else, but in terms of review. I take on board Councillor Keating's point. Public funds, we are the guardians of public funds. We have that responsibility to make sure money is wisely spent and understand how it's been spent. It may not come direct from the borough, but it does come via various routes from our taxpayers. But perhaps more importantly, it's real risk when you get these things like Enterprise M3, like Sierra and Cedar before it, working on such a large scale. You lose sight of what it's actually doing, what it's actually achieving. Now, I'm sure when I go knocking on doors, I can say so far this year, on the doors I've knocked, no one's mentioned Enterprise M3. I'm quite relieved, because if someone says, what's it done, I wouldn't have an answer. Of course, it's new. There wouldn't be an answer. When this money starts flowing, people might want to know. I'd like to tell them. I'd like to celebrate the success. When it comes to 2 leaders out of 16 leaders, so not necessarily our leader, going to a board, we get further and further away of the achievements of Enterprise M3. There has to be a mechanism whereby it comes back regularly before this committee for us to see what the money was spent on, what it hoped to achieve, what it's actually achieved, to see whether it was successful. What the motion asks for is officers prepare a briefing paper on ways that could be done. They're not saying we need a huge, big scrutiny, we need to go for every penny and everything that's been done, but there needs to be a system in place where this committee can actually look at the achievements of Enterprise M3, celebrate them, and actually share them. We are the coalface, we are the front line, we're the ones more likely to speak to residents than anyone who's going to sit on the board of Enterprise M3. And I think we're an important part of feeding the success out to the public. So it's important it comes back to a committee on a regular basis. How and in what circumstances? I mean, this is what this amendment is literally asking for. It's a look at ways in which it comes back to this committee for us to explore. I think it's important we do explore. So I will support it because I think the intentions behind this amendment are absolutely right.
Frankly, I'm quite amazed that you would not go for this, because we've always been open and transparent. How do you make things better if you don't scrutinise? We should never lose, in particular in Basingstoke and Dean, the fact that we are known to be a very open and transparent council. Not only that, it gives confidence to business and to the public.
To some extent, I agree with something that Councillor Franklin was suggesting, the need for Enterprise M3 to be open and transparent, but that is their job. It's not our job to tell them how to be open and transparent. There is a leaders board, and Basingstoke and Dean will be represented on it, and I think by interrogating our leader we will find out very much more of the detail that may not come out in an annual report from Enterprise M3. I think asking our officers to go away at this stage and prepare a paper is very premature. The organisation's still very young, it's still developing its own governance, and I think we should probably look at this probably in a year, maybe 2 years' time, when we have actually got some experience of how it's been worked.
Yeah, I just want to come back on that. I think we've always been a council and an area, and obviously I'm a county councillor, that has always hit the ground running. I just think I would like to understand what's happening, and you say you can interrogate the leader and that. I want to give confidence to the public, as Councillor Gavin James said, that we should be able to explain and have explained and understand. And I think by doing something like this, it's more understandable. We've got people of all different levels. We've got people that are sitting around here that have been to university and all that. I left school at 15 with no qualifications and still have no qualifications. So you need to be able for everybody to understand. If we're going to put in wholeheartedly, that's the members of the public as well as councillors, I just think we need to have a little bit more knowledge of what's going. And that's basically all we're doing, is saying this is what could happen, and they're coming back and telling us. It's brilliant. The whole concept is brilliant. So why do you not want to come back and say, well, we've scrutinised it, this is it, we could probably make it a little bit better here, people would be able to input things into the scrutiny. I just can't understand why we wouldn't want to be really open to that, because we've got really good businesses and we've got people that are starting out in businesses. We've got a wonderful town and a wonderful county. I think we should be promoting it more.
I'd like to ask the leader what his views is on the motion.
On the leaders board, it's very difficult to answer what it will do, because at the moment it hasn't met. We are having our first meeting. We're having our first meeting in like 2 weeks' time to elect a chair and to basically get ourselves in order, and at the same time to set ourselves an agenda for what it is that we want to do as a board. I don't think anybody would argue that the LEP has to be against the fact that the LEP needs to be transparent, and there needs to be accountability, and there needs to be a reporting back. And one of the things which I'm sure that we will be doing as a leaders board is to set down a set of criteria about what reporting we want to see on an annual basis or on a regular basis, so that we do get clarity. Because, I mean, if you think it's difficult, actually it's not that easy for some of us leaders to keep up pace with all the various things that are going on, because we're not necessarily involved in all the things that are going on, because they're happening in other parts of the LEP, and we wouldn't be right up to speed with them all. I think at this stage, it's, as I read the amendment, I really honestly would rather not use our officers' time to do work and research at this stage for something which the leaders themselves may well decide they want to put in place, and will do the work separately. And and that will be taken forward in that way. I am very happy to give an undertaking to take the question of scrutiny to the Leaders Board and ask to have it put on the agenda as an item which we can discuss as a board and see what arrangements we would like to have put in place. I mean, it is clear that if one's going to have scrutiny, it will have to be by agreement of all 16 participants, and therefore it's going to have to be something which we can all sign up to and will not be overly cumbersome. There are precedents for it. We have, for instance, have the Police and Crime Panel, which is, if you like, a scrutiny committee across Hampshire for scrutinising the work of the Police and Crime Commissioner. And that is starting to find its feet and to give itself a few more teeth than it used to have. I think there may well be a role for some form, well, there could well be a role for some form of scrutiny. How exactly we can set it up, I don't know at this stage. So, but certainly researching, what other people have done is one of the obvious starting points. But I think it's a bit early to be doing it, and given the fact that we ask a lot of our officers to get on with all sorts of other different things, to go off and ask them to go do work at this stage until we've got a clearer view from the other leaders what direction they would like to go in and what they would find acceptable, because we can't impose it on the LEP. Might be a bit premature, but if you want to amend, I mean, I've got a copy of it in front of me, the amendment to say that we are very much in favour of public scrutiny and ask the leader to undertake to raise this as an issue at the Leaders Board, I'm very happy to accept that. And then bring back a report of what they said to the next meeting.
Thank you. First of all, Cathy, thank you very much for that, all your answers to the questions and your presentation. I thought it was very helpful, and I'm very glad Basingstoke was so involved in it. And you asked the question, are we up for growth? Yes, we are. Turning to the amendment, I have some sympathy with what the Labour Party are saying, but I think that we scrutinise ourselves, and I think they should be allowed to scrutinise themselves. And I don't think it is right that our officers should be involved in scrutinising another committee that we are only part of. And I think we should leave it with the leaders group for the moment and let them come back with proper proposals at a later date. Thank you.
Chair, can I just ensure that people understand where we're coming from? We're not saying that Basingstoke and Dean should be the sole prerogative in terms of scrutiny of a partnership that spreads across half of our area. We're not saying that. Neither are we saying that we should be the sole element of scrutiny. What we're simply saying is good governance, and if you don't introduce scrutiny under good governance, you will have it imposed on you by government, because government will not pump millions and millions and hundreds of millions of pounds into partnerships which exclude scrutiny. Right? So good governance dictates, and I'm sure Cathy would tell the board, good governance dictates that if there's a request for scrutiny, that you well have to do it more or less. Now, we are not seeking to impose scrutiny at this point. We're simply seeking to, like the partnership people, Cathy and her supporters, they're saying, let's set up a partnership. And we're saying, not a problem, go for it. It's good for us, it's good for Basingstoke, it's good for our economy. But if you're setting something up, you might have to set it up right in the first place. And something right in the first place means you're spending public money, you have a concurrent, absolutely, mechanism by which it is scrutinised. Now, it's early days in this partnership, but in those early days, you develop the partnership and its activities alongside with developing mechanisms by which it is scrutinised. Now, it won't be scrutinised by Basingstoke and Dean, it'll be scrutinised by an arrangement created which covers the area covered by the partnership itself. So, if you're voting against scrutiny, then you're getting it wrong. You're giving the wrong impression. You're simply saying, we'll spend public money, but we won't be accountable. Now, that's daft. Thank you.
Thank you. As Sean said, I think there's been a misunderstanding in relation to the amendment to the recommendation tonight. All we're asking you to do is to produce a paper to look at some of those practices. This committee is an economic committee. We have a paper before us and a paper later on talking about economic growth across the borough. I think it's essential that we look at scrutiny. I think it's a function that we should be looking at, and it's just saying what is happening across around the country in relation to scrutiny. The LEP, if you ask most people, is this body that's out there. Nobody really knows what it is and what it's about. But like I say, there's significant money that's going through it at the moment, and more power. And there'll be very few local authorities on the leaders board. Well, at the moment we're very lucky and we're well served on the board, and also hopefully on the leaders board, but we may not be in the future. There will be other authorities that are going to lose out in relation to this funding, but what we need to ensure is that it is scrutinised. And when we talk about scrutiny, we're not just talking about the finances, it's the practices, it's everything about the LEP and how it works. And we as a local authority need to understand that. We need to understand how the board members are elected, how it works. We need to be able to have a real grasp of that. And I don't know why there was always such a fear from the administration when we discuss scrutiny, and it should be looked at really positively. The leader said tonight that the leaders board will want to see what it reports back, but the reality is not for the leaders board to determine what it reports back to us. We should really, as an economic partnership here tonight, be deciding what we would like to see coming back and have an understanding of actually the work of that leaders board. Don't fear scrutiny. We need to embrace it, and it needs to be something really positive, and it doesn't need to threaten the work of the LEP, and it needs to strengthen that work. We need to give that LEP much more credibility, that we as a local authority and our communities that we represent understand and embrace the work of the LEP. So I urge you to support it.
I've got two more speakers and then that's it. Councillor Still.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly don't have any fear of scrutiny, but we have to be sensible about what we're talking about here tonight. I like Councillor Sanders' proposal of going forward, back to the other leaders, asking the question and then coming back to us and giving us the answer. And I would like to propose we actually take a vote on that now and put this forward. So if I can have a seconder. Then I can come back with that. Okay. Trying to wrap it up. Yeah, that's all I was saying. And we have to bear in mind there are lots of educated people on the LEP, so I am full confidence that what they're doing is good.
I'm not going to repeat exactly what Councillor Still has just said. She said exactly what I was going to say, and should the amendment fail, then I'll quite happily second her amendment based on the leader's suggestion.
Right, thank you very much. It's been proposed and seconded for the amendment. Please show. Those in favour, please show. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. And those against, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's failed. And yours hasn't been, sorry, it has been seconded. Can you repeat it again, please?
Well, the officers can put it in better words than me, but basically I would like to see Councillor Sanders go back to the leaders on the LEP and come and put, sorry? And put forward the proposal of scrutiny, talk to them about it, and then come back to us with their comments
answers. Whatever.
And Councillor Gunner,
It's all been said.
Councillor Keating, then Councillor James.
Chair, on the basis of the vote, I would like to invoke the 2/5 rule to refer this to council. Thank you.
Councillor James, do you want to speak while this is being discussed?
Yes, I'm happy to accept the second one as the second best option and better than nothing. I would just mention, because Councillor Steele mentioned educated people in the LEP, and it's going to work out well. I do remember there's an industry called banking that had a lot of educated people that were lightly regulated, and we know where that ended up. So,
Thank you. The officer to speak about the 2/5 rule.
Chair, thank you. The 2/5 rule cannot be invoked because it has to be a resolution that's been passed by the committee. That resolution wasn't passed because it was lost.
Thank you very much. It's been proposed and seconded.
Chair, I'm speaking to the Constitution. A resolution passed by a committee shall be treated as a recommendation to the Council, where immediately after the resolution has been passed, no less than 2/5 of the members of the committee present at the meeting indicate they wish this rule to apply. No, it hasn't been passed by the committee. Councillor Keating, that resolution was lost. Therefore, it's not something that's been passed by the committee, and the 2/5 cannot apply.
Right. I'm afraid then I'm being led by officers, and if you want to take it up afterwards, then you can do so. I've been...
The last, I beg your pardon.
Right, I'm in a process of voting on the amendment. So all those in favour of the amendment as described by Councillor Still, I've got a name, please show. You counting. And those against, please show. Abstentions? 3 abstentions. Yes, please do.
The last time we were told by an officer that they had legal advice, that the legal advice was that you take the full motion first and then you take the amendment, which turned out to be nonsense. For the last 14 years, people who have lost a principled motion, a motion dealing with principle of this nature, have had the opportunity under the 2/5 rules, if the motion has been carried by a majority of the thing, the minority parties have the legality and the opportunity under the 2/5 rule to ask for something to be referred to council. Now, that's how the 2/5 rule has been interpreted until tonight, and I object to the interpretation put forward, and I want that to be examined legally. Thank you.
Councillor Keating, I've read verbatim from the Constitution what it says. That is absolutely correct. That the 2/5 rule can be invoked on the resolution that has been passed by the committee. There is no question that that resolution has not been passed. It has been lost. And I'm quite happy outside of the room, Councillor Keating, to take you through the Constitution and previous examples where this has been applied.
Right, that's it. Stop. I'm not having any more of this. It's going to stop now. If you don't like it, then we'll discuss it. And it'll be discussed and decided upon. I have been given advice. I've taken this advice. That's it. Right. Rest of the recommendation on B. Agreed? Thank you. Yes, and I could give you the motion was 7 or 8. The amendment to the amendment.
Chair, I've been asked to confirm the comment made by the committee this evening. This is how I've written it. Members, please chip in particular councillor Cyril Gardner, if you're not happy with this wording. I've said that the committee is in favour of the public scrutiny and accepts the leader's offer to undertake to take the matter to the leaders board and bring a report back to this committee in what was said.
Right, thank you very much. Now, does anybody want a comfort break? Or do you want to carry on? We did the recommendation. We already done it. It was a yes. It was agreed. But I think you were too, actually, not being rude, but you were too busy wrapped up in the previous discussion with the solicitor. So I think you probably didn't hear it, but it did go through. And you can look at it on the webcast.
If I may then, Chair, on the basis that that's been passed,
Yeah.
I would like to invoke the 2/5 rule to refer the issue of scrutiny to Council. Thank you.
I'd like confirmation from the solicitor, please.
Chair, the report this evening is asking for the committee's comments, and the resolution, as I read out, was that the committee's comments were etc. etc. So these are comments. It's not a resolution passed by this committee that can invoke the 2/5 rule.
Right, moving on to paper C. We have a presentation from Natalie Wigman. And you're going to introduce the leader.
Go. It was now. With the first stage in the development of this master plan. I think we had a very good discussion on that occasion. What I found most heartening was that there was pretty much cross-party support in favour of moving forward. Kathy posed in her last slide, seems a long while ago we saw that, yeah, Basingstoke, are we up for growth? My view is that we don't have any alternative but to be up for growth. It's a fact of life that you can either move forward or you go backwards, but you can't stand still. I think it's also a fact of life that no matter what colour of government we get next time around, the pressure will be on areas like ours that can deliver growth and has delivered growth in the past to deliver more growth for the future. And that's where they will be putting their funding for the future. So if we have, I think, during the course of the year, started to crystallise a number of themes by which we could encourage, attract, develop and put in place the necessary growth that we need to have. If we are going to secure a vibrant economy, but not just a vibrant economy, but a borough which is a good place to live, with people in houses that they want to live in places that they want to live in, with jobs to go to so that they can afford to live there. What we've done within this plan is to try to bring together all those different strands, because sometimes you do seem as if you're going down, you ask somebody, what exactly is the council trying to achieve? I don't know. Well, it's not surprising, because you're always looking at one aspect of our activity and then another and then another. But actually they're all interlinked. They cannot be seen as just a whole series of separate parts. They do have to lock together, and that's what this economic master plan seeks to do. I do know that one member of this, I think he's a member of this committee, but thank God he's not here tonight. He's somewhere in Tenerife or somewhere. always moans on about the fact you can't have a master plan because we've got umpteen different master plans around the place. Well, fine, but can we just use the term for the time being? If somebody can come up with a better one in the future, yes, but let's not waste a lot of time arguing over that particular semantic, which he would have done had he been here, I'm sure. With that introduction, you'll get a far better presentation from Natalie, so I'll let her get on with it.
Good evening. Just a short presentation to set the scene for the master plan. The master plan provides a coordinated economic plan for Basingstoke. So a number of different projects and plans are all under this one umbrella. The master plan will maximise investment opportunities, both public and private, aid company inward investment into the town, strong local economy, which is key to a strong local community, and acts as an umbrella for a number of different projects. Basingstoke has a strong economy. We're very, very lucky here. We've survived the recession well, and this is largely due to the diverse nature of our economy, so we're not dependent on one particular sector. We've got excellent connections, brilliant connections up to London. This is one of our key selling points. Our transport network is fantastic, our rail networks are brilliant, and outside of the direct links in the town, we've also got very easy access to airports and ports, so it's a brilliant place to base your business from that perspective. We've got 3 office-based business parks in the town, and they offer very competitive rents. Got a highly educated workforce, a very buoyant manufacturing and distribution sector, and excellent leisure and retail facilities. But is this good enough? We know that Basingstoke is not getting on the radar inward investment wise. The key inward investment decision makers do not have Basingstoke as one of their key locations. A lot of our commercial stock is tired and out of date. And the low rental values, although they can make us attractive in terms of people wanting to locate a business here, do prevent developers from building new A-grade office accommodation that the town desperately needs because they can't get the return they need on that investment. We have the top of town, which is tired and needs a new lease of life. And businesses tell us that there's a lack of suitable housing to support economic growth. In the short term, doing nothing is not an option. If we do nothing, Basingstoke will decline and investment will go elsewhere. In autumn last year, we did some research with businesses on how Basingstoke was viewed as a business location. We got very good response in terms of our geography. Our location on the M3 corridor and our proximity to the M4 corridor make it very strong for investment, and our easy access to London. As I've already said, our brilliant transport links, both rail and road, are one of the other areas that business see as a key benefit to the town. There's good availability of land for development, and rental costs both for living and commercial property are competitive. There's also good access to customers, and there's a very diverse customer base in the borough. Its demographics mean that it's a good place for businesses to set up because you've got a good range of different customer types. And the fact that there's a pro-business council is seen by developers and investors as a real benefit to coming and investing in Basingstoke. On the negative side, property agents and inward investment experts think that the fact that the council owns a lot of the commercial property can actually be seen as a negative, and the perception of that is that it can be harder to strike a deal. There's also a feeling that the look and feel of Basingstoke can put people off. It's going back to the old kind of image issue that's gone round for a long time. It's considered to be less of a hub than anywhere else, or than some of the larger areas. So, for example, Reading would be the kind of the big hub locally. Basingstoke is considered very much a secondary business location in that respect. And the lack of high-spec office space is one of the biggest issues. There's currently no available Grade A office space in the town. So should someone want to invest in the town in a quick move, there would be no accommodation to accommodate them unless they were looking for kind of the lower level, the B level stock. This slide just summarises some of the things that was told more specifically. Again, it picks up the issue around the office space, and it also talks about the need to promote the town, that there is a lot going on here, but we're not promoting it, we're not marketing the benefits of the town effectively enough. We are already taking action to help the economy. We've got projects like the Basing View regeneration. We're currently working on a property investment strategy, so a lot of the issues that have been raised around commercial stock, we are looking at, we are aware of those issues. We're trying to rejuvenate the top of town, and as you'll be aware, there's a town a project manager specialising on that area specifically. We have a tender out, we've now received the tenders for a leisure park development partner to really lift the game of the leisure park, to be putting it in one of the premier locations for leisure in the country, and trying to attract more companies like Air Kicks, that kind of cutting edge sort of leisure attraction. And we have major housing sites. We have an ability to deliver housing sites like Many Down, really put us in a good advantage over others. But one of the key issues is, how do these issues join up? At the moment, they're all separate projects with separate goals, and we're not working to one overall economic goal for the borough. And also, just to summarise, obviously economic success of the borough, economic growth creates GVA for the borough, gross value added. The report does go into this, but just as an example, if Basing View was able to create 4,000 new jobs, that would create GVA of 233 million per year. And just to clarify, in case anybody needed an explanation on that, the GVA is the measure of the economy in the value of the goods and services produced in our area. So that's the value of the Basingstoke economy. It's our part of the economy and what we generate here. As the leader touched on at the start, we came with a proposition to EPP last March, which was agreed by Cabinet in July, that we would go away and create a master plan for the borough. This slide's slightly back to front, and the reason for this is that through the development of the plan, and since the papers have gone out, we've had a discussion around the order that the master plan should best sit. But in theory, there are 3 sections to the master plan, as you would have seen from your papers. The aim of section 1 is that it's a very high level inward investment type document. Is to whet the appetite, is to get people thinking about Basingstoke, thinking about the benefits to coming to Basingstoke. We didn't want to bog that section down in detail. It's just to get you thinking about what else might be there. Section 3, so to jump a bit, is identifying the actions, the gaps and the solutions. And the reason why we've moved them around is this is seen very much as the kind of the positive, the solutions, the things that we're really trying to deliver. And then section 2 is more telling the story. It gives the detail of all the things that are happening, the things that we can predict with reasonable confidence because of the 20-year timescale, so it fits very closely with what will be the new local plan, and a number of partners, projects and partners timescales as well. And the plan is for this to be an interactive web-based document, so not a paper document, not as you see it here. We don't want people to have to wade through lots of information to get to the section that they want. So by having like a click-through system on a web-based approach, people haven't got to get tied up in detail of different areas, but it will also mean that we're able to update information very quickly and very easily. So you'll have noticed from the master plan documents that we're waiting for information from the police, for example, on development that they might have. The hospital are currently working on strategic plans and are waiting for them to update us. So the idea of having this interactive web-based approach means that we can constantly update that information as it becomes available. So it's a living document, it's not a document in a set period of time. I will kind of... Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry. I'll gloss over the enterprise M3 stuff really, because I know Kathy's covered that and the debate's covered that in some detail. I just wanted to pull out the fact that if the LEP's aim is to secure as much funding as they can for the enterprise M3 area, our aim really needs to be to secure as much of that funding as we can for Basingstoke, and to do that we need to demonstrate that we are able to grow and that there's a real willingness for growth in Basingstoke, and the master plan is kind of the key tool in us doing that. And again, just to summarise, that there's lots of similarities between what the LEP's working towards and what we're working towards. And we're already beginning to see benefits of that relationship. Obviously, we've got the Junction 6 work that the LEP were heavily part of and heavily supported us getting that funding. We're working with Enterprise M3 to explore links around a university-led incubation centre, as Kathy said. And one of the things that's come up very strongly in the LEP's SCP is some of the transport support around the borough, and particularly A33 in Basingstoke, which is a real pinch point for businesses, particularly in Chinham. So we're already seeing benefits from that close working relationship with the LEP. Alongside the 20-year plan that's been developed, we've been running some workshops and we've been speaking with partners to try and future-proof that work. We want to make sure that anything we're putting in place now or over the next 20 years will help the borough into the long term, in that we don't want to do anything that might jeopardise something we might need in the future. So we've run a number of workshops, as I said, one of which was run with members, and we've just started to give some thought to future growth, where growth might occur and what might be needed in the future. And it is just to underpin this 20-year plan to help us understand more where the future is going. In summary, the reason to have the master plan is to produce one plan for Basingstoke and not a number of different plans. That's one plan for the whole of Basingstoke, depending not on who the individual partner is. So as I've alluded to, we have support from people like the Hospital Trust, from the police, from the fire service, from Chinham Park, MEPC, who run the privately owned business park. They're all partners that have bought into this master plan and see the benefit in having one combined plan for Basingstoke. We need the plan to understand the needs and the potential of the town's economy, what we can achieve, where growth might occur, and we can use this plan to really sell Basingstoke. One of the feedbacks that we got from businesses is that we're not doing enough to promote Basingstoke, we're not getting on the radar image investment wise. If we want to attract more investment into Basingstoke, we really need to sell it, and we can use this master plan as one of the tools by showing that Basingstoke are committed to growth, that we've got a lot of really good things happening here. We can use that as a tool to attract further investment. We really want to drive economic growth. We don't want to sit back and see what will happen. There is a concern that Basingstoke will decline if we don't continue to invest and if we don't seek new investment into the town. And lastly, there are limited resources. We've heard from what Kathy said. There are 4 of these SciTech towns. We really do need to compete with our neighbours, with Farnborough, with Woking, in order to achieve that funding. Therefore, we need this master plan as the tool to help us deliver that. Thank you.
Before we ask questions, I think you'll agree it's a very informative presentation. And thank you very much. Please stay there for questions. Keating.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that distinguishes Basingstoke from most of our neighbouring towns and cities is that we have loads of money in the bank. We really do. We have lots of money, and we're currently paying people to invest it for us in markets that do not include Basingstoke. I welcome this master plan, and there's a lot going on within the issues identified within the master plan. There's a lot of work going on already, different parts, transport and matters of that nature. The top of town is going to be rejuvenated. All that work is going on, and that's obviously welcome. One of the key points that, in my view, that Cathy said, that Natalie spoke about, was the lack of first-class office space. Now, of the 65 acres of Basingview, nine are totally underdeveloped or not developed at all. I believe it would be rational and reasonable to use some of our invested monies in one form or another to create, i.e. do it ourselves if we have to, first-class office space. In other words, be the catalyst for some of the regeneration of Basingview by saying, if nobody else will build first-class office space, we'll build some ourselves. I don't mean build all the necessary ones, but build some, or a particular large one of that nature, which would be able to feed into the marketing of Basingstoke, because we're now marketing a town that doesn't have first-class office space. We would then be able to say, and we're building it. There are other opportunities to use our invested monies. This is effectively bringing the range of plans together, and so I support that, and I support the master plan, and I make my comments on that basis. Thank you. Yeah. Why don't we do it?
Yeah, the answer is, I entirely agree, and we're going to. We're already in discussions about exactly what we can and we can't and we should be doing. I think the trick in it is going to be to make sure that we do it in a way in which we can recycle the capital so that it comes back to us. We don't want to be here in 20, 30 years' time with a wonderful town that we can't afford to maintain and support. So we've got to be careful. But, well, I certainly won't be, and you won't be either, if I may say so. Some of the others may be. But I entirely agree. There's no point in having money if you don't spend it. You're just going to make sure you spend it wisely.
On a point of information, I'll be here. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Natalie. I thought it's an excellent report. I've got a few little niggles as I went through it, but I'd just like to run past you for comment. There's mention of the M4 connection, and we've talked elsewhere in the paper about proposals to improve the capacity up to Sherfield-on-Loddon, but I would stress that the area up from Sherfield-on-Loddon up to the county boundary is also very important, because that is not dualled, and that does create bottlenecks in the morning coming south and going north. The period of growth on page 28 seems to jump around between the local plan period to 2029 and the vision to 2033 using the same numbers, and that just looks a little odd. So if that could be tidied up. On page 33, oh sorry, it's a reference to 13,400 homes, and it relates to both periods. On page 33, we sing the praises of the hockey team, but we ignore the fact that we have a half-decent football team, we have a rugby team, which probably also deserve some mention. On page 34, under sports and leisure, we don't mention that we do have a fair number of golf courses around the borough. And then on page 36, we actually say we're going to build on one of them, which is a little bit negative. So if we can put the positive in as well, it does counteract that. On page 35, reference to the top of the town, the first thing we say is it's been identified as the next area for improvement. I think we could be a bit more positive in the opening statement and then say, and it's going to be improved. But there's a lot of good things up there already. I think that needs possibly a little bit of wordsmithing. But apart from that, I think it's an excellent document.
at least 6 of us went to the top of the town meeting here last night, a presentation, found it very, very interesting. And I think it's the next meeting we've got a presentation. Okay, sorry, who was it? Yeah.
On the kind of the general points, yes, absolutely, I can add those in. That's fine. On the point around the A34 links, sorry, A33, M4, yep, and the A33 links, that is one of the key themes that's come out of the workshops, actually, is strengthening those road links there on the A33, potentially dualling or strengthening the link to the M4, certainly. I also know from Enterprise M3 point of view that the work around the A33 is very important, and they're also looking potentially at Chinham Station as an option as well, again to try and strengthen that link with Reading. So it is something that people are looking at. It's just not got a firm plan yet. Obviously, there are a number of schemes that we've put forward, but it's certainly been mentioned as a priority, and it is one of the things we're looking at.
Thank you, Chairman. It's actually a question for Clive. Obviously, he's the portfolio holder. There's a lot of mention in this economic master plan, which I hope we can all endorse tonight, around one of the selling points is we've got a plan in terms of housing and 13,400 homes being built during the plan period. And that being very critical to support any kind of growth we have. I wanted to check the entire administration was behind it, because I sat in this room about 3 years ago on a different committee where a number of members of your group and cabinet put forward the idea of 400 homes a year and 594 homes a year. Are they now fully supporting what's in this document?
It better. I think no. I think I mean that was only partially not serious. There is no. One of the points that was made, I was at a dinner before Christmas listening to a lot of local employers, and one of the points that they make is the importance of having good places for employees to live, and the lack of good accommodation in some areas. So that clearly is something which the employers find is a potential problem. We have to make sure that we do provide the right number of houses to support the growth of the businesses, but equally we've got to make sure that we put the money into developing the businesses, because what we don't want is 20,000 extra people sitting at home having to live off benefits because they can't get jobs, or alternatively having to clog the roads to get in and out of Basingstoke first thing in the morning because they've got to go and work somewhere else. So the two, I think, have to run in tandem, and you can argue, what you like, but if you want growth, and that's why I said the key thing at the beginning is you've got to get into your mind that we've got to go for growth. If you want growth, you've got to advance on both fronts at the same time, because one can't work without the other.
I can absolutely agree. And looking at the stats, the number of people retiring in the next 20 years is greater than the number of people leaving our schools and colleges in the next 20 years. So clearly there's a challenge in maintaining the current workforce unless we accept there's going to be some immigration. I just wanted to make sure that the number that, strangely, I've advocated and used the economic argument several times over the last few years has now been accepted and endorsed by the Conservative Party, and I welcome their conversion to liberal democracy.
Do you know, there's nothing worse than a smug politician, is there? Yeah. I wonder when he was going to come up. No, I think, in fact, you've completely put me off the point I was going to make. Oh, it was that you don't just have to look at the number of people retiring as opposed to the number of people coming to work, but look at the stage before that. You look at what the situation is in our primary schools at the moment, particularly in our infant schools, where it's virtually impossible to find a place. They're chock-a-block. The birth rate is continuing to grow. So, and these are all people who are going to want to come into employment within the next 20 odd years. So we know that there's going to be a push on employment requirements, which, if we don't start building them now, won't be there in 20 years' time.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a few. On page 27 of 47, it refers to a company called Fife. I assume, is that supposed to be Fife's the banana people? It's spelled F-I-F-E. It's the only one I can think of. So yeah, the big banana warehouse, that makes sense because they are a big employer. On page 22 of 47, on the Basingstoke negatives, the first one is, it refers to poor access to suppliers. I wonder if you could elaborate on that. I quite what you mean by suppliers. And on the second, the lack of availability of high-spec office spaces. I mean, I'm aware of one I go past regularly, which has virtually been empty ever since it's been built, which is very high-spec, the V3 one, Viables, which is on our land, which it sort of concerns me. Bearing in mind Councillor Keating's comments, we didn't build it, and we're not the least. Well, I think we just own the land that it's on. But there is a danger with a lot of these buildings. We build these things, and there were a lot built. I can remember Brook House when that was built in the 60s, and I don't ever remember anyone using that. And it just sat there as an eyesore and it was used very, for a few, maybe a year or so. And there's a lot of places like that around Basingstoke that seem to have been redundant before they were even built. And so there are places that are available, but people still don't seem to want them, and a lot of them have quite a lot of turnover. I think the trouble is very often this message seems to come from the commercial sector who are saying this, and I think what they want is, they want to reduce the supply all the time because they want to increase the rents, basically. But there are other issues there as well, sometimes, it's put in the right sort of space. If you could certainly give some information on the poor access to suppliers. That's I can't make that. Well, that is at all. Thanks.
Well, Brook House was, of course, the county court at one time.
The answer to your question on the access to supplies is basically a concern that the sorts of supplies that they want to have are not readily available in the environment, in the local area. And that was the point which was coming back. You pointed out that there is one office block that could be classed as grey, though I'm not sure it probably does in the current list of standards. But it's a perception that people have. It's not necessarily the reality, and that's what we have. But that's what we have to deal with. That's what they're telling us. There's no point in saying, well, you're not right, and therefore you're wrong. We've actually got to accept if that's what they think, then that's what we've got to deal with and provide the evidence that they are here, whether it's the lawyers or whatever you need. I think your point about, there were many buildings sitting there in Green Park on the M4, empty for year after year after year. We have to be very careful. We can't just sort of sling up an office block and then hope that somebody comes along and wants to fill it. We've got to make sure that if we do invest our money in an office block to get things going, that it's the right kind of flexible space that people can find very good to use. But then we do have one example of the one, I can never remember the name of it, the one that Councillor Finney's got his business in Belvedere now, which has a number of businesses in there. It's actually thriving. It's filling up all the time. I think it's virtually full now. So it's a very good example of what can be done when somebody's taken the time and effort to upgrade the quality of the building stock. I think there's more opportunity to do that, because one of the things we have is a very good raft of medium level businesses which have started up in Basingstoke and want to get bigger. They are growing. We've got a lot of growing businesses. We've got to make sure that we don't force them to leave the town because they can't find the quality of office accommodation and the size of office accommodation they want for the next stage up, before hopefully they become a global headquarters and want to build their own estate somewhere. But we need to give them the opportunity, so that we really do have a wide range of accommodation available. So we've got to be careful how we do it. We've got to research it properly, but do it. I think we have to.
Thank you. My question's for Clive as well. Can I ask, in relation to this economic plan, will there be a requirement on the local plan and the housing numbers to increase as a result of this economic plan?
Not per se, though I think the paper going to P&I next week actually envisages an increase in the housing number anyway. That's a recommendation from office. But the number of jobs which it is hoping to deliver is within the level of jobs that should be met by the revised housing number. The two have to stick together, because otherwise, if we are saying we're going to create 20,000 new jobs and there's only enough houses to feed 10,000 of them, I suspect that the inspector will throw it out. Equally, he might well say, if you want to build 20,000 more houses and there's only enough jobs to support them, that is not a sustainable thing. So it's achieving the balance, and an important part of considering the housing number will making sure that the balance does fit together, and not being too overly optimistic about what you can do on economic growth, but not being too pessimistic about it either.
But your view as leader is that we, in relation to delivering this economic plan, the housing number that we have doesn't need to increase. Is that what you're saying, to deliver this plan?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that the housing number is now evolving, because one of the things that we've looked at as a result of the first consultation process on the housing number, and also looked at in terms of the latest evidence that's become available since we did the work last year, is to look to make sure that the economic plan that we have is reflected in the housing number. So hopefully we've got the two to mesh in together, but no doubt you'll probably all pull it apart next week when you get to P&I.
And in the plan, it's made reference to the need for, there is a lack of suitable housing. How are we going to deliver more suitable housing? And particularly, how are we going to do that? Because what it makes reference to, that we need a range of housing. And in the Economic Plan, Master Plan, Section 1, Appendix 1, it talks about homes to suit everyone. And it also makes reference about, the type of homes. So just how are we going to achieve that, in light that we only delivered 27 affordable homes last year?
Well, I mean, for a start, we have a clear policy on how many we expect to see delivered, which is 40% last time I looked at the developing plan. And one would expect that will actually, so the absolute number will obviously increase as the amount of house building increases, which it's showing all signs of doing. I think in terms of making sure that we get the range of homes, there's only so much that we can do in terms of influencing what individual house builders will choose to deliver in a mix, in terms of 3 and 4 bedroom houses, etc. Though we can give indications, I would hope, within our planning policies of what we like to see. We do have, of course, if you take the full length of this plan running through beyond the local plan period, you're looking at probably something like 6,000 to 8,000 houses to be delivered on Manydown. That's where I think we have the opportunity, if we are good at managing that development, of ensuring that we do get the right mix, which not only is the right mix to produce sustainable, good, homogeneous, coordinated communities locally within that, but also that will feed and supply the right numbers of different types of homes going into to feed into supplying the workforce within the borough. I think that will actually give us a good head start in controlling all of that development. And it may mean that we will have to look at, being able to do that, various business models which don't necessarily take the optimum return out of the investment potential that's there on Manydown in the short term, but look at models which take it out over a longer period to ensure that we sustain that kind of control over the housing stock. So you can't have people coming in and demolishing things and putting up different things. There's some form of structure that we put in place there. That's, I think, is the next stage of the development of the Manydown Master Plan, which will be coming forward to this cinema fairly shortly, I think.
My next question is around one of the presentations that we had at P&I was about this ageing population, this bulge in population. I can't remember the consultants that gave us that presentation, but what they said is they showed us in the sort of diagram form how that would impact on the economy and on us as a town. And there's no mention of that really in this vision in relation to ageing population. Can you pick up that issue for us?
Well, to the extent that one is being required to work longer and longer, therefore the provision of jobs actually provides the ability, for you to carry on working for longer, if you like. It doesn't cover that because I'm not sure that that's the correct subject for this part of the planning process, because this has brought together some of the economic sides of it. I mean, obviously this can develop into a much broader vision, which would encompass a lot of other aspects of the activity in the area and how we deal with a lot of people, and I'll get there before you do, of being one of the the old people who have to be looked after, and how we make sure we've got the right provision for that. I think is much more of a planning issue than it is of an economic issue, subject to there being the right economic model to make those kind of homes, if they have to be called homes or whatever they happen to be, accommodation for older people who no longer work and no longer wish to live alone, sustainable. But I don't think that's necessarily part of this. It certainly wasn't an issue which would be worth looking at when we're looking at how we tie this together at this stage. But I wouldn't argue with you that it's not something we need to tackle. I just think it's a separate issue from outside of it.
I suppose I picked it up on the first paper, but if I could pick it up again in relation to this economic plan, I think it's really important to have, and it is an exciting economic master plan in lots of ways, but in relation to growth or investment for investment's sake or growth for growth's sake, what is the purpose of it for Basingstoke? Because there'll be many people that won't benefit from many of these things, and I think it's important, maybe in this plan or as an addendum to this plan, is that there are people that will not benefit from aspects of this, and I think they need to understand, or that the economic plan needs to be relevant to them as well. And how can we make it relevant to all of Basingstoke and Dean?
I mean, there are other aspects of it, but this very much does tend to concentrate on the Basingstoke element of it, because that's where a lot of the economic activity within the borough is. I think it is a very valid point that one needs to explain to people the fact that if we don't have a thriving economy where you can, I mean, it's fairly self-evident we want a local job if we can have a local job, and we want to have somewhere to live, because we need to be able to get to that job. But it's more than that. We won't have a shopping centre with lots of shops where people want to shop if we don't have a local economy that has therefore people living locally that can afford to go and spend money in those shops. So you won't get a festival place or a regenerated festival place, because Festival Place has been with us for some time now, and you talk to the owners of Festival Place and they have lots of ambitious plans of things that they want to do with Festival Place to make it bigger and better. Well, they're not going to invest money in it unless they see that there's going to be a market for the goods that people want to buy in that area, and if they don't invest money in it, then the shops won't want to stay in it because the footfall will drop, and then all of a sudden we don't, as residents of the borough, have that as a facility to go to. So it all links in together. The same thing will not be able to attract into the borough new leisure activities for the leisure park, or even persuade people to regenerate what they've got and to keep ploughing money into their ice rink, or we'll have to plough money into a water park of some form or another at some point in the future, because these things do deteriorate fairly rapidly. But we've got to create an area of economic activity which buzzes, which feels active, which of itself has a vitality, which means that you provide a better quality of life for the people who live here than they would otherwise have if it didn't exist. And it's on their doorstep. And I think that is, in a very long-winded way, trying to sell the benefit to them. And if they're not going to get the immediate benefit because they won't be here to see it, their children will, and their children's children will.
It's also what I think we need to make reference to in this document or somewhere is that there are many people that won't or cannot afford to use those facilities. So if we are going to have an economic master plan for Basingstoke, it's how do we ensure that it benefits all of Basingstoke and Dean's residents, because there are many children that can't afford to go swimming, or can't afford to use the cinema, and all of these amazing facilities that we have, and they're being excluded. And so I think there needs to be some reference, and I know this is an economic plan, but it needs to ensure that it's relevant to Basingstoke, and people need to understand that it is relevant to them. So we're seeing this growth, and we're seeing all this activity, that they will also benefit from some of these amazing new initiatives and facilities and things that are happening in the town.
And I hope that they would be able to do that. And we certainly cannot forget about the people who cannot immediately access a lot of these things. And we have to make sure that we do put in place or a means of accessing those facilities, which is attractive to them, because we know if for no other reason, we know that if you can't access a lot of facilities that other people are accessing, you get social division, and social division leads to antisocial behaviour and all sorts of disruption, and that clearly has to be something which we try to work against at that stage. I'm absolutely happy to take on board that we can put in a part on that, look at how we can phrase it in a way that is actually a practical approach to it, rather than just be sort of full of platitudes about we must do it, because that doesn't get you anywhere. I think the one trouble you get with businesses is that they make very hard decisions. They'll look at something and they'll say, right, if you can't guarantee me this, if you can't guarantee me that, I'm off somewhere else, or because somebody else will, and somebody else will give me that, and they go very quickly. And therefore, what I think we actually have to demonstrate with this plan is a lot of ambition, a very clear vision. We have to get it out there saying, look, we are going there. We want you to come with us. And we have to make sure that that is something which is completely across the chamber, that everybody is behind it, because they will look at it and say, look, if we think that there's going to be a change in administration to whatever, and they're going to change this, I'm not coming there, because I'm not going to put all my money into Basingstoke and then find that the rug's been pulled out from underneath my feet. So this has to be something which we can all agree on and all take forward. I don't actually see it as being a political thing. I think it's apolitical. It's something which is for the good of the people of Basingstoke. It's the right thing. It may need fine-tuning by all means, and let's work all together on getting it fine-tuned and take it forward. But I really want to see us take it forward, and if we do that, and if we show that degree of commitment, then I think the LEP will listen to us and give us the money. I think government will fall over backwards to help us, because at least they'll have found somebody who knows what they're doing and knows what they're trying to achieve, and he's actually trying to get there. There's so many other towns that don't actually know where they're going and what they're doing, and don't start doing anything. We don't want to be one of those.
Thank you, Chairman. I wondered if the leader would agree with me that we should be looking to build more executive style homes. So that would encourage top-end business people not only to run their businesses from this fantastic borough, but to live here as well.
I don't want to sound sexist about this. I know I get myself into trouble now. But one of the things which came out of the research that we did is that a very key person in deciding where you're going to locate a business is the managing director's wife. And that's on the basis that all managing directors are men, of course, which is not necessarily the case. So I should rephrase that perhaps to the managing director's partner. But I think the point is that they want, the thing that they look at is there somewhere nice for me to live? Is there good housing for me to live in, somewhere where I feel I'll be comfortable in. So the answer is, I don't know whether we need to build more, but we certainly need to continue building homes, executive homes, as well as providing affordable homes. It shouldn't be an either or. We need to do both, because if you don't have the right sort of accommodation within easy striking distance of the office for senior executives, you don't stand a chance of attracting quite a number of businesses in just the same way that you won't do if you've got other sorts of housing too. So I do agree with you, but whether we need to build disproportionately more, I don't know the answer to that. But we do need to keep building them.
Yes, I've been thinking more along about sustainability, the long term, and I remember an elderly couple that had to go into care homes, into nursing homes, miles apart. I'd like to make sure that we don't do that. I actually think that we've got the capacity here to be able to go back to the old-fashioned way, where families could be close together, where if mums and dads have to go into a care home, there's care homes there. We've got that balance, so that you can come and from the cradle to the grave, you come to Basingstoke and there's no need to go anywhere else, because all the facilities is here, the care homes, bungalows, right across the board. Yes, we need large executive homes with granny annexes, but really to think about sustainability, so that families can be together. I just think we really need to think a lot wider than that.
Again, I think that's a planning issue, but certainly one of the things that has been in discussion in developing the Manydown master plan is to say, look, we need to have properly integrated communities. So if you live somewhere, when you get to a stage when you no longer want to live in separately, but you want to go into a communal living, and as you get older and maybe widowed or whatever, or widowed, that you can do that without having to move away from all of your naturally existing support groups and things. And that's part and parcel, I think, of the planning that we need to do for that. I think the other thing that one could say is that if we are successful in growing the GVA, and we already have a very high GVA anyway, compared with a lot of other areas around here, but if we grow the GVA, in doing so, that grows the income to the council, particularly through business rate and other things like that, and for that matter through taxation and rents and from the buildings that we've invested in other things. The more that we grow that income, then the more opportunity there is for us to do new and different things to ensure that we get a properly supported community in the way we'd like to see it. So I think one breeds the other, if you like.
Thank you, Chair. I was struck by something you said, Clive, about Manydown, because I'm on the committee that deals with Manydown and learning all the time. But this economic master plan is, if you like, for the next 20 years, up to 2033. And you referred to 6,000 to 8,000 houses. Now, the current Manydown plan takes us up to 2029, and they're only planning to build 3,000 to 4,000 houses, whereas you're referring to 6,000 to 8,000 houses. Now, I know there's a little gap in time, but you wouldn't build another 3,000 or 4,000 houses in 2 or 3 years' time at the end of the plan. So could you help me to understand the distinction?
I think what I said was that we're going to be building 6,000 to 8,000 houses in the next 30 to 40. Not in the next 20. So I'm looking not within this plan, but obviously you've got it's part of it will be delivered now, and you've got to start the economic development now to be able to support that at a later stage.
I've got no more questions. Debate. endorsement, just now really need to endorse the recommendation as on page 17 and 47. Agreed? Agree. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to our two presenters tonight, Kathy and Natalie. Thank you very much indeed.